Hey everybody, what's up? What's up? So today I wanted to do a quick video lecture for section 2.1, specifically parts A and B. So by now you guys should have done your homework for 2.1 and 2.2. So those sections are going to be together, and this lecture is only for 2.1A and B. All right. So make sure you get that homework done before, so that way you can have kind of at least a little background, or at least a little exposure to the material before we talk about it on here. So these lecture notes will be are shared with you in this assignment. So I want you to follow along with me real quick as I take you through them, and then if you have any questions, let me know. But other than that, let's jump into it. Let me screen share my slides real quick. All right, so 2.1, we're going to talk about molecules to metabolism. So we will talk a little bit about a chemistry, but don't worry about that part. We'll kind of review some stuff, and if you have questions, we can talk about, but it shouldn't be too bad. Okay. So 2.1A is going to be talking about the carbon compounds and metabolism, specifically carbon, being that it's really important for us to understand that many things actually are built using the molecule of carbon. Think of it like the building block that builds like almost everything. So that atom is really important. But let's quickly talk about molecular biology. This unit is going to talk about molecular biology. Just so you guys know, vocab wise, it's going to be the study of structure and function of molecules. So we're getting down to really small things like molecules that are essential to life. Okay, so it's going to explain living processes in terms of like the chemical substances involved, so like the chemistry down to the atoms. Okay, so we're going to kind of narrow our focus or zoom in to say. Okay. Organic molecules, don't let the picture kind of scare you, but organic molecules are those that basically are synthesized by living things. So we make these organic molecules in our body, we synthesize them, and they are all carbon based. So because of that, carbon's very important. And the reason they're all carbon based is because, and this is really important, so make sure you guys kind of see this part, but because carbon is really important because um, it's very stable, and oops, and um, because carbon is able to form many diverse um, structures, or its ability to form a diverse stable compounds, because carbon, the really cool thing about carbon is that it can bond um, up to four things, or it can bond up to four times, because the way it's created chemically wise is, or the way it is, its physical structure and chemistry, is that it's able to actually combine or make four bonds with other things. So it's really stable, and it's able to make very diverse amount of compounds because it has four bonds it can create with other things. Okay. Um, oops. Okay, so because of their valence electron structure, so let's kind of talk about carbon a little more. So carbon has, so I don't know if you guys remember, but just to really quickly review, you have electrons on the outside of the molecule. So electrons will be on the outside, and then protons and neutrons are going to be on the inside. But because of the valence electron structure, so carbon has, if they're going to be these solid orange dots, carbon has four valence electrons in its outer shell. So what that means that carbon can create or make four bonds. So four bonds, specifically covalent bonds, okay? So because it has four valence electrons on its outside layer, it can create four bonds. So this circle, let's say that's the electron from the carbon, and then you can have a hydrogen, which only has one electron in its valence electron in its outer shell. And you need a bond between this electron and that electron. The idea is this is now a bond, that's one bond, Same thing with this hydrogen, that's 2 bonds, 3 bonds, and 4 bonds. So now you have 4 covalent bonds that this carbon has made. Each one of the bonds is bonded to hydrogen. So this is C4. So if we were to write this out, this would be sorry, not C4. I apologize. It's going to be CH4. And CH4, I believe that's like a methane gas for burning, like a carbon fuel. But so this allows carbon to form a wide variety of simple complex structures. So if you can kind of see it, this carbon has the 4 bonds, 3 to hydrogen, 1 to another carbon. So because of that, it can just keep going, creating a bunch of complex structures. Then you can have a carbon as 1 bond to a hydrogen, another bond to another hydrogen. And then because it has to have 4 bonds, it can double bond to a carbon. So each stig or each line is 1 bond. So this carbon has 4 bonds. This one has 4 bonds, 2 here, 1 there, 1 there, so on and so forth. So we can also get to a point here where carbon can create a bond with hydrogen and then a triple bond with another carbon. But the total will always be 4 because that's what carbon makes. It makes 4 covalent bonds. So you have triple bonds to carbon, 1 to hydrogen, so that gives a 4, and this one has 4 too. Triple bond here, 1 there. So that's kind of in a short version of this review about carbon. So make sure you guys kind of come back to this slide if you need to. But that's it right there for us. There are 4 primary types of monomer compounds. Remember, mono means 1. Monomer compound, carbon compounds that make up basically all living materials. Okay, so there's 4 basic ones. I'm going to quickly talk about them individually, but amino acids, these ones right here, these are going to be the building blocks that will, when they come together, give us proteins. Okay, all proteins in our body are made up by amino acids, and amino acids are made of a bunch of carbon molecules bonding together. Then we have fatty acids. Okay, these are our fats. The fatty acids, when these come together, a bunch of them, they're going to create phospholipids, like our phospholipid bilayer of the cell, the outer cell. Oops, sorry. Then also make sure you understand that fatty acids are going to be made up of a bunch of carbons, right? So then we have carbohydrates. This is more common, maybe. Carbs, carbohydrates, same thing. These are obviously made up of a bunch of carbons and hydrogens, and there's going to be 2 different ones. We can have glycerol, which will be also part of phospholipid. Eventually, it'll be like hooked onto these fatty acids. Then we have monosaccharides, means 1 saccharide. 1 saccharide means sugar. So a bunch of carbohydrates create these one sugar structures. And also we can have polysaccharides. When a bunch of monosaccharides, a bunch of singles get together, they're going to create a bunch of poly, okay? So if you look here, this is 1 monosaccharide, but when they come together, now this one is hooked up with this one. Now we have a disaccharide. This is technically 2, but if it keeps going, then we get to polysaccharides, bunch of sugars linked together. Also nucleobases, nucleic acids, nucleic bases, you'll see that word kind of come up in different ways. These are going to be the building blocks that create nucleotides. Nucleotides are then going to come together to create our DNA and RNA. Nucleotides are those that are, if you guys remember the ATCG, adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine, ATCG, those 4 are considered nucleotides, but they're made up of nucleic bases, and these nucleic bases are obviously made up of a bunch of carbon compounds coming together with other ones. So just a quick map to show you basically that carbon compounds or carbon molecules create pretty much every living complex structure, okay? Let's talk about urea. So let's quickly talk about this. Urea is an interesting story. I believe we'll see a video on it a little bit later, but urea is an organic compound. Okay, organic meaning it's made up of carbon. So when you guys see like organic foods, it's not the same thing as organic compounds. Organic foods, just it's a label for food, but organic compound basically means that there is at least 1 carbon in there. Okay, organic chemistry is chemistry that you will study that has to do everything with carbon. But organic compounds um, produced by organisms when organisms break down proteins. So this is urea is basically an organic compound. The way we get urea is when our body breaks down proteins that we eat. And if you guys kind of see, urea is very similar to the word urine, because urea is actually then excreted from our body through urine. So what gives our urine the smell is actually their urea. So we eat proteins, we break them down. When we break them down, urea is produced in our body, and then it's in our blood, and our blood gets filtered in our kidneys, and then the kidneys obviously produce that urine. So that's how we get rid of it. But we make it in our body by breaking down proteins. So it's also organic, and it can be artificially synthesized. That means um, we can go into a lab and create urea, organic compound. So it's kind of cool. That was not a thing a while ago. But urea then is put into, like you guys see this bag in this slide, it's put into a fertilizer a lot. And it's actually a really good fertilizer, but it can be created or made in a lab and through a similar lab processes that our body would do to proteins. So really cool. And this is the chemical formula at the bottom right of urea. The little triangle, the tip of that triangle is actually a carbon. We didn't write it down here, but it would be carbon, and then you have a double bond to the oxygen, and then one bond to each of the nitrogens. So that's a carbon in the middle of that molecule. All right. Let's see. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about B. So that was A. We'll have some assignments with that, but let's talk about B, metabolism. So metabolism, you guys heard that word a bunch of times. Some people say I have a fast metabolism, I have a slow metabolism. What does that mean? Okay, metabolism basically means the chemical breaking down of foods, or in other words, organisms constantly make and break down molecules. Okay, so let's quickly talk about that. So metabolism is going to be a web of all reactions in our body. So all the chemical reactions that happen in our body, every single one that happens in our body is going to be called metabolism. So this totality of chemical reactions basically has two pathways. Okay, so with metabolism, there's going to be two ways that our body actually does metabolism. The first one is going to be catabolic. Okay, the second one's anabolic. And if you guys heard of like anabolic steroids or things like that, we'll talk about what that means. But all the reactions in our body together are called our metabolism. And some of those reactions happen really fast. So that's basically the person with fast metabolism. And some of us, our reactions don't go as fast, technically, like speed-wise, right? So that's normal or slow metabolism. But catabolic pathway, okay, what it'll do is, if you guys look at this here, catabolic pathway basically means that you take a bunch of these big molecules here, okay, and you use these molecules, okay, and you break them down into a bunch of smaller ones, okay. So it's like the digestion idea, right? We take something big, we break it down. When we break it down, we give our body energy, useful energy, and heat is lost. That's what kind of keeps our body warm, right? 97.7, 8, 9, whatever. People have different ones, degrees, right? So it keeps our body warm, but takes big molecules, breaks them down into smaller particles or small parts. The idea of that is kind of like digestion. That's the catabolic pathway, okay? Anabolic pathway is when our body takes a bunch of small particles, compounds, molecules, atoms, and things like that, a bunch of small things. And it actually uses energy to create big things, like bigger parts. To give you an example, it's kind of like when our body builds muscle. Like if you work out, that's kind of where we get the idea of anabolic steroids. Those are steroids to get the body to build a bunch of muscle by taking little amino acids because protein, right? And building muscle because muscle is pretty much all protein. So the idea is taking a bunch of small things, putting energy in there to create big molecules. Okay, so anabolic builds, catabolic breaks down. In other words, okay. All right, so anabolic reactions use a bunch of energy to build complex molecules. Just to kind of reword that and give you an actual slide. A bunch of complex molecules from simpler ones. So you use energy, take a bunch of little things, and you put it together to create a molecule that's kind of like a bigger one. So you get energy here. It's a really good image. Energy plus smaller molecules, they come together, create a big, large molecule. That's anabolic, okay? In other words, you take a monomer plus a monomer, then that's they're two together, right? Now you're building, then you take another monomer, you add it to those two, now you have three together. So it's the idea of taking smaller things or monomers and creating polymers. From monomer to polymer, that's anabolic, you're building, okay? These reactions remove water. So what you can see here is you have a monomer plus a monomer, and then you have an H2O kind of leaving. And then this same story goes here where you have now two of them plus another monomer, and then water leaving. So these reactions remove water between monomers. And when it's removed, this OH and this H, that gives you H2. So those two H's, H2 and then the O. When the H2O or those leave or as water, now this bond and this bond get together to create that red new one right there. Okay, that's how we build polymer chains. In anabolic processes, basically we call it dehydration, okay? So they go through a dehydration reaction, okay? In a way, kind of like condensation. We produce water, okay? We make water, all right? Then condensation reactions, just to kind of quickly show you another really good image. Condensation reaction here on this image has two molecules being joined together by condensation. So you have a molecule in green, molecule in pink. You have a hydrogen from one and an oxygen and hydrogen from another. This is also called alcohol group. But anyway, so you have a O and an H plus another H from the other molecule. That gives you H2O, that water right there. If you see the arrow out, that means it's leaving. And then here, now we see this bond right here has half of it in pink, half in green. That means that's the newly synthesized bond. That is that new bond that took two monomers and made it one molecule together. Now we were building, right? This is anabolic, we're building, and the water molecule is removed. It's leaving, it's condensating, it's going out of the system. Let's talk about catabolic, okay? Catabolic reactions actually is now going to be the reverse of that, right? It breaks down complex molecules into simple ones, which then releases energy. That's why we eat something, and when it's broken down, that gives our body, those bonds are broken, that gives our body the energy from food. This is a releasing energy, and these are also going to be through hydrolysis. Hydro meaning water, lysis meaning to cut. So we actually use water to cut these bonds. Now I want to show you what that means. So you have a large molecule, bunch of bonds here, black colored bonds right there. Then what happens is when those bonds are broken, when enzymes come in and break them, then you have energy released. That's awesome. We can use that energy for our bodies. And now because those bonds are broken, these are a bunch of small molecules. Hydrolysis, it's really cool here to see. So this is a polymer. There's three red molecules together. So this red bond here, what we do is we add water, and by adding water, it's going to chemically cut that. So now you have this isolated OH here from the H2O, and one of the H's from the H2O is here now. So now you have a monomer, and now there's only two left. Then there's more water. So then we cut that again with water, hydrolysis. Then you have OH here and H here. So now we have 1, 2, 3 monomers. We took something that was basically three together or a big molecule, broke it down into 1, 2, 3 small monomers. So we break down complex molecules. Hydrolysis is opposite of condensation. So they're opposites of each other. Hopefully that makes sense by now. And then polymers are broken down by adding the water and breaking those covalent bonds. All right, so that's the anabolic versus catabolic conversation. Okay, let me know if you guys have questions, shoot me email or whatever. But if anything, you can kind of rewatch this or um, kind of rewind it to see it again. Okay, hydrolysis kind of getting you back to this green and pink parts. So example here, you have a molecule that has two molecules together. Now it's a big one. That bond right there needs to be broken in order for them to become two monomers again. So we add water. You see the arrow going into the reaction, and this is the reaction arrow. The water is going in there. That means we're adding water. Water is added. When it's added, it goes in there and it attaches a OH to one side, H to the other, because H2O, and then that technically cut that bond. And now these are two molecules separate from each other. Now they're monomers. Okay. So these pictures here are really great. I would suggest you kind of coming back to this if you want to see a kind of a conceptual, but basically anabolic versus catabolic. Anabolic, you need energy and small molecules to create big ones. Catabolic, you take big ones, you cut those bonds, to release energy, and now you have a bunch of small ones. So really good picture to come back to. Condensation reactions versus hydrolysis reactions. This is a really good slide too. So these are kind of like those compare contrast questions. If you get to that, make sure you see it. So condensation reaction, energy is consumed, right? You need energy. Covalent bonds are formed, so you need energy to create bonds. Water is removed, right? Condensation means water is leaving, and then you take monomers to polymers. That means you're building a bunch of monomers to a big polymer. Hydrolysis, or water cutting hydrolysis, is going to be releasing energy because you're breaking those covalent bonds. And the way you break those, you actually need to add water. Okay, that's why you need to drink a lot of water when you exercise and things like that, because that water is actually needed not just to keep yourself healthy, but to help break down those bonds that are in our fats and things like that. You're trying to do that. Okay, and polymers or something big is cut into pieces. Now there are a bunch of monomers. Okay, really good slide to summarize. So now we got to these review questions. These review questions go back into 2.1 A and B. So start with number 1. Make sure you look at the command terms: define, define, list, define, outline. So make sure you actually address these. I will create a Google Doc for these questions and we'll submit it like that. Okay, so but that's about it for this video lecture. Hopefully you can watch this and it'll help you with assignments and things like that. And if you need to watch it again, just hit rewind and watch it again. All right, so be safe, be cool, be good, and get your work done. Have a good one. Adios.